Napoleon was hard-pressed financially, and it was proposed to resort to paper money. But he wrote to his minister, "While I live, I will never resort to irredeemable paper." He never did. Wednesday, November 29th, 2023, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Well, Napoleon is back in the news. There's a new film about Napoleon you probably heard of. And what I want to do today is look at the secret weapon that he had to bring France actually from ruin, really. France was on its knees after the revolution. By 1796-97, they tried printing a lot of money with the Assignats, with the Mandats, and it was a disaster. And not only did he bring France back from its knees, he made it into an empire. So I think it's really interesting that we cover this today. Before I do, just wanted to let you know that Gold Investments still has a special deal for various dates gold sovereigns. If you use my promo code Monaco64SOV, you get 5% off the list price. And you can also check my North American precious metals affiliates. All the details are below in the description if you're looking to buy gold and silver for the first time, or if you're looking to keep on stacking. And just before we go on to Napoleon, one other thing, and yes, I'd like to thank, if you're listening, Chase, thank you for your book. I went to Gold Investments yesterday to meet Oliver Temple and Simon, have a chat with them, and they had this for me, The Last Honest Man. It's by James Risen. I've started reading it. I got it yesterday, and I'd like to thank Chase if you're listening to it. I will talk about this book. Let's get back to Napoleon. Well, my wife went a couple of days ago, I think, with a few friends to watch the new Napoleon film. One thing she said is that she hadn't been to the cinema for a while, but the ticket, a hot dog, and a drink was £30. So there you go. So much for inflation coming down, right? But I wanted to talk about the money, actually. That's the secret weapon that Napoleon had. And of course, in this latest film about Napoleon, my wife is a history buff as well. And you can be sure that she's read quite a few of the books that I've recommended, especially this one here, which we're going to talk about today, Fiat Money Inflation in France, how it came, what it brought, and how it ended, by Andrew Dixon White. And I've recommended this book many times, but it's quite relevant now because of this new Napoleon film. And I think for people who haven't watched my videos, this will be interesting. It will kind of explain to you how Napoleon was able to do what he did when he took over in 1799 as First Consul. Prior to 1799, as most of you probably know, there's the French Revolution. It kicked off in 1789. And by the early 1790s, France really was in really bad shape financially. It had been brewing, I guess, since Louis XIV, the Mississippi bubble in the 1720s. France never got over all the debt that it incurred, all the inflation, and the economy was on its knees in the 1790s. So they tried a new experiment with printing paper money backed by the church properties, the lands of the aristocracy that they confiscated. So it looked all really good and scientific. The Assignats, they gave up on gold and silver because it went into hiding, because government got too big, there's too much debt. And the National Assembly, they thought very hard about bringing paper money back because they remembered with John Law and his schemes, how it ended all in tears. But eventually they succumbed. They said, we're only going to do one deal of the assignats. Unfortunately, they went on to print, well, hundreds of billions of livres or francs at the time. And then they tried their own kind of CBDC, which was the Mandats, around 1796, which was supposed to be as good as gold, but it wasn't. It wasn't redeemable, and it didn't even take off. It lost its value even before the first issue. And by 1797, France, economically, politically, socially, was on its knees. And so with that, I'm going to now go to the book here and reference what the author said about what was happening, or what brought Napoleon about. And before I do, though, I just want to give you some examples of what happened to prices of food and all the basic necessities of life in that period, which the author talks about here on page 59, as you can see. So, for example, and he gives it in dollar terms. And how can he do that? Well, because I've got here a 5 franc silver coin from 1821. Yes, granted, it's a bit later, but it will give you an idea. So that was a 5 franc silver coin. And I think that's Louis XVIII, who came back to power after Napoleon left. And then we have here a $1 silver coin. So the exchange rate is roughly $1 to 5 francs. So he was able to do this. So in 1790, a bushel of flour was 40 cents, US cents. And by 1795, it was $45. And how come? Well, because they weren't using this anymore. They were using the paper, the assignats. A bushel of oats, 18 cents, $10 by 1795. A cartload of wood, $4, 1790. 1795, $100. And it's interesting because my wife went to watch this film, and I remember 20, 25 years ago, you'd spend at the most 12 pounds for the ticket and for a bit of popcorn or a drink, and now it's 30, right? Keep that in mind. A bushel of coal, 7 cents to $2. And it got even worse, it says here, but these prices about the middle of 1795 were moderate compared with those which were reached before the close of the year. And during the year following, perfectly authentic examples were such as the following. So a pound of bread went up to $9. A bushel of potatoes went up to $40. A pound of candles, which was $8 in 1795, went up to $40. And the cartload of wood, which was $100 in 1795 and $4 in 1790, went to $300. So that's where you first see the hyperinflation in food prices and the basic necessities of life. And I think that's what's happening today. But let's skip to the summary here, which I think will be a good way to show you what happened in that period and how Napoleon really rose to power, and his secret weapon, of course. And I highly recommend you read this. I'm going to put a free PDF in the description. You can buy it also on the Mises.org website. So here we go. Bear with me. It's not that long. Thus was the history of France logically developed in obedience to natural laws, such has, to a greater or less degree, always been the result of irredeemable paper. What's irredeemable paper? Well, it's the paper money, the dollar bill or the pound note that promises something, but doesn't give you anything. You can't go and redeem it for specie. Specie is gold or silver coinage. Created according to the whim or interest of legislative assemblies rather than based upon standards of value permanent in their nature and agreed upon throughout the entire world. So you can see why the BRICS, and I'm not saying the BRICS are going to be perfect, why they want to go back to something real like gold and commodities. It's the real world. Such, we may fairly expect, will always be the result of them until the fiat of the Almighty shall evolve laws in the universe radically different from those which at present obtain. And finally, as to the general development of the theory and practice which all this history records, my subject has been fiat money in France, how it came, what it brought, and how it ended. It came by seeking a remedy for a comparatively small evil in an evil infinitely more dangerous, to cure a disease temporary in its character. A corrosive poison was administered which ate out the vitals of French prosperity. So what was it seeking to remedy? Well, economic slowdown, basically. It's the Keynesian solution, Keynesian evil of government interference, of printing money out of thin air, right? That's what they tried. It progressed according to a law in social physics, which we may call the law of accelerating issue and depreciation. So the more you print the issue of currency, fiat currency, the more it depreciates. That's what it means. It was comparatively easy to refrain from the first issue. Yeah, it's like the QE, right? QE1, and then we'll stop. There you go. It was exceedingly difficult to refrain from the second, to refrain from the third, and those following was practically impossible. And that's why when I first read this book over 20 years ago, I knew that this would happen because we are in the fiat currency regime. There is an old saying in French, le plus ça change, le plus c'est la même chose. Or the more things change, the more they remain the same. So over 200 years later, things haven't changed. It brought, as we have seen, commerce and manufactures, the mercantile interest, the agricultural interest, to ruin. It brought on these the same destruction which would come to a Hollander opening the dikes of the sea to irrigate his garden in the dry summer. It ended in the complete financial, moral, and political prostration of France, a prostration from which only a Napoleon could raise it. So here's the interesting part. We come to the secret weapon. We got to go back a little bit so you can understand why it was a big weapon and why it worked. But this history would be incomplete without a brief sequel showing how the great genius profited by all his experience. When Bonaparte took the consulship, the condition of fiscal affairs was appalling. Sounds familiar? The government was bankrupt, an immense debt was unpaid. The further collection of taxes seemed impossible. The assessments were in hopeless confusion. War was going on in the East, on the Rhine, and in Italy, and civil war in La Vendée. All the armies had long been unpaid, and the largest loan that could for the moment be effected was for a sum hardly meeting the expenses of the government for a single day. At the first cabinet council, Bonaparte was asked what he intended to do. He replied, "I will pay cash or pay nothing." And by cash, of course, he meant specie or gold and silver coins, not paper. From this time, he conducted all his operations on this basis. He arranged the assessments, funded the debt, and made payments in cash. And from this time, during all the campaigns of Marengo, Austerlitz, Jena, Eylau, Friedland, down to the Peace of Tilsit in 1807, there was but one suspension of specie payment, and this only for a few days. When the first great European coalition was formed against the empire, Napoleon was hard-pressed financially, and it was proposed to resort to paper money. But he wrote to his minister, "While I live, I will never resort to irredeemable paper." He never did, and France, under this determination, commanded all the gold she needed. When Waterloo came with the invasion of the Allies, with war on her own soil, with a change of dynasty, and with heavy expenses for war and indemnities, France, on a specie basis, experienced no severe financial distress. So yeah, he did lose Waterloo, but that isn't the point. So there you go. That's his secret weapon. What's the secret weapon? Well, is sound money, real money. You can't, run a country, let alone an empire, on paper. And that's what we've been on for over 50 years. And as the author said here, there's this law that once you start with issue of paper, you can't stop. It's the only way you stop is when it all gets destroyed, right? When it all ends in tears and becomes worthless. And I think, unfortunately, that's the road we're on. Am I saying there's going to be a new Napoleon? No, but what the lesson here is that we can only get back on a sound footing with sound money. And I would say that whatever they try, like CBDCs or whatever you want to call it, digital currencies, if they're backed by something or as good as, unless they are redeemable, it won't work. And you can bet that it will fail eventually as well. So with that, let's quickly look at the markets this morning. It's 8:42 a.m. London time. So yes, gold continued to move up quite nicely yesterday. I think overnight the high is 2,052. Right now we're at 2,042. We're up about $2. The low has been 2,036. Silver is down slightly, 6 cents, just below 25. Low has been 86, 24.86. The high 25.22. Dow futures up 96. S&P is up 12, and the Nasdaq is up 48. I've noticed Treasury yields have continued to drop. They've dropped through key levels here, especially the 10-year. We're at 4.28. So this is telling me that the markets are discounting a recession, and we spoke about that yesterday, a hard landing. And yes, I could see the Fed coming in and cutting rates maybe in the spring. Right now, I think the market is discounting something in the summer of next year. But yeah, the economy is not in great shape. We're not going to get the non-farm payroll today. Usually it's, this week. Usually it's the first Friday of the month. But it's going to be Friday the 8th. That will be a good number to dissect and look how the economy is doing. Today we've got the the first revision. It's called the preliminary GDP number for the third quarter. But I would say that's in the rear view mirror and it's not really that important. So yeah, that's what's going on in the stock and bond markets. In the currency markets, we've seen, I saw that the dollar index has dropped through some key levels. Right now, currencies are pretty steady, so we won't go over them. What about commodities? Well, let's have a look at them. Give me a second here. Bring them up. We've got crude oil up 0.33%, WTI at 76.71. We've got Brent back above 80. It's at 81.60. We've got platinum down a little bit, but it's trading around 940. And high-grade copper is unchanged at 384. So with that, I'm going to wish you all a very good day. Take care. Bye.